I've seen a lot of challenge runs recently, but none for one of the greatest RPGs, the Legend of Dragoon. What the fuck's going on, fellas? Even before the onslaught of challenge run videos popped up, I'd always wondered if it were possible to beat this game with items only, which would entail no attacking and no Dragoon form, so let's give it a go. I will use blocking, mostly to skip turns, but also to offset the lack of healing, and of course, fleeing for my own sanity. In most standard playthroughs, attack items are neglected in favour of the addition and Dragoon systems. They're far from awful, in fact they often out-damage melee attacks, but they're just not cool, which feels out of place for a game like this, where everything's pretty cool. A character throws a shiny thing at an enemy and then you blast your thumb off your hand, mash an X to get the highest percentage, which increases damage. When it comes to deciding between timing inputs for slick anime combos and transforming into an armored dragon warrior, or simply pressing the X button over lengthy magic effects, there's a clear winner. Not to mention the inventory limit of 32 and the crippling lack of remuneration. There's legitimate reasons why people don't stack attack items, but fuck those nerds, we're stacking hard and we're gonna see how far I can get. Admittedly, not very far. As the game begins and Dart darts off to Seles, we immediately hit a roadblock. Also, here's the obligatory spoiler warning, so if you haven't played it, you probably shouldn't watch, but, look, bro, I don't care, whatever. I'm not gonna be precious about who watches my videos, I'm desperate at this point. Jumping the fence, we're met with two guards who force an encounter, but we only have one attack item in our inventory, the fire elemental Burnout. Prior to this, there's no way to grab extra items, no save points and no stores, so we have to clear this encounter with two standard attacks, as the enemies take 1 damage from a burnout due to their fire resistance and have 4 health each. After this, we grab the burnout from the box, because we're probably going to need it. Leaving the area, a follow-up encounter features 2 underlings and a big boy. One of the underlings requires a standard attack, and the other one flees, which is great. Now we've got 2 burnouts for the boss, who isn't resistant to fire, so he takes 2 and dies, leaving us having used 3 total attacks. There's a few tricks I looked at to get around this, the New Game Plus glitch where you carry over an old game's data into a new save, or the debug menu which allows you to warp to particular areas. Both of these would require cutting the power during a save, and the only way to save is after the first encounter, so the absolute best case would be skipping 1 mandatory melee attack. After some extensive reading, it seems these methods can also produce later issues such as softlocks, so I decided that it's not worth it. I took the L and started the run after these introductory encounters. Dart will forever have 3 uses of double slash, but if all goes well, that should be it. This is where the real run begins, and we head through the forest outside of Seles where there are no required battles. Grabbing 1 burnout from the merchant and 1 from a chest, we get through with minimal issue and on to Helena prison to rescue our sweetie. Shit starts to ramp up a little as the first mandatory encounter is a warden who has 9 HP and fire resistance, which means burnout do 1 damage with a level 2 dart. The only damaging item I can buy at this point is a burnout for 10 gold, so I return to the forest to farm Trents, as not only do they drop pellets, an earth damaging item, but they also yield 9 gold and die to a single burnout, which keeps my stock high for the farming. Unfortunately, I fought enough of these bastards to hit level 4 and never got a pellet, so I tried to clear the warden again with my higher magic attack, and sure enough, a decently mashed burnout does a whopping 5 damage. He takes 2 of these and experiences one of the worst deaths you can have, being burnt alive. Good job, champ. From here, the merchant will sell you spark nets, and in addition to costing the same as burnouts, no enemy in Helena is resistant to lightning. Dart's magic attack stat means we can one-shot the enemies here too, so I dump my entire inventory to max out spark nets. Helena can be a tricky map, as there are many narrow paths with wardens spawning randomly at the exits, and the battles can't be run from, which is why I over-prepared. On the way to collect Shana, this bastard appears right in the exit, and I get caught off guard and have to dump a net into him. Fucker. We find our boy Lavitz, give the 3 guards a shock they won't soon forget, clean the place out, and then exit to fight a mandatory man on an elevator. Sneaking around to collect Shana's cell key, we blast through 2 more fights of 3 wardens. These forced encounters are chewing through my item inventory, but luckily each warden drops 9 gold. So with that and all the loot, I'm stacking a hefty purse. It's plenty enough to fill my inventory. Shana joins the team, which is great, as Dart and Lavitz both have 12 magic attack, and Shana starts with 17. She's also significantly faster than both the boys, so we've got an elite magic spammer who I pray doesn't get targeted because I can't afford to revive her. I stack up on spark nets again at the merchant and buy 1 healing potion for an emergency. You never know when the enemies will go all in on Shana's supple flesh, and that'd make me jealous, so I take precautions. Now we fight our first real boss, Frugal. Frugal has 2 phases. During his first, he can't be targeted and stands behind 2 wardens. These are quick to die, after which he summons 2 elites, but he's also up for grabs now. Shana focuses on Frugal, and I pray the boys take the brunt of his gunt, because they're both set to perpetually guard, which I don't know if I mentioned, but it raises your defense and restores 10% of your max HP, so you effectively become unbeatable. Unfortunately, this is where some RNG complexities arise. Frugal can power up, which reduces damage to him by half for a turn or two, which means more spark nets. Shana pops one off, hitting good damage, and he immediately powers up, so I take out one of his 2 elites who does a spell upon death that hits everyone. Lavitz has dogshit magic defense, so guarding's important or he'll straight up die. I hate foreshadowing. Frugal's attacks do about 30 damage in an unguarded moment, with our characters currently rocking around 100 HP each, which is obviously a huge concern with minimal healing. The battle's going pretty well, until out of nowhere, Shana starts getting fucking dunked on, so I pop my emergency heal and finish the fight with hopefully enough spark nets to clear the coming areas. The gang escapes and we're off to the prairie. Couple treasures there, a bit of gold here, we run from every battle and arrive at the Limestone caverns. I had a spare Total Vanishing from the last map, which is an item that instantly kills a regular foe, and I used it on a random enemy to push Shana to level 5, and I gave her the Night Shield for a bit of extra defense. Since she's the main attacker and she's not really healing or defending, it's probably a good idea to bulk her up a bit, you know? We clean out the map, get a bunch of equipment to sell, some more attack items, bitch slap the Patamon, and we're off to fight our second boss. This is why I needed to stack hard in Helena, and why chewing through items carelessly would kill the run, as there's nowhere to stock up between the Frugal fight and the coming boss, and he's got quite a bit of health. The snake, or the scientific name, Nature's Sock, takes quite a bit of damage from a level 5 Shana with spark nets, so I didn't have to stack as hard as I thought, and he dies with minimal effort. The next area is a town full of dialogue, so we dump our inventory again, get better armor, amass some items, and mash X through the dialogue. By this point I'm pretty good at mashing X, I'm dreading what that's going to do to my joints though. Then we arrive in Hoax, and what they don't want you to know is that it's actually real. After a bit more tech smashing, we send Shana to the kitchen and find ourselves up against the toughest enemy so far, this broke-ass ninja. It's neat seeing intended systems subverted, as Hoax contains 2 bosses, both of which have a core melee component. As we're not using attacks, we never really see these execute, which is why the ninja is significantly harder than normal. Once my N-word gets under a certain amount of health, he creates shadow clones, which can't be attacked, but do some light attacking themselves. The intended way to fight this guy is to give his real form a bonk, which dispels the clones, but magic doesn't clear the shadows, so this encounter with a single enemy in a light gimmick becomes a real boss fight against 3 brothers. The clones can't use magic themselves, but the small ticks of health they take off, in addition to the magic damage from the real ninja, is brutal, as again Lavitz has horrible magic defense. I pop a cheeky heal once and eventually mash his dinner, but we're not done yet, and before we can catch a breath, we get a second boss. Kongol, the last living Giganto, is naturally a melee powerhouse, and his gimmick is that not perfectly executing your combos gets you countered. This does pretty decent damage, but luckily for us, we're not using attacks and can't be countered, plus he's super weak to magic and goes down like a Legend of Dragoon fan on any YouTuber who even glances at it. Now we unlock our Dragoon powers, which we'll never use, and add Rose to our party, who we definitely will. What's great about Rose is that she's a better Shana, in looks and early game stats. She's like a fine wine in that her value increases with age, and this bitch is over 10,000 years old, so I'm confident she'd sit well on my tongue. She comes rocking 40 magic attack, and everyone at this point has about 20, so we've effectively doubled our damage and can backbench Lavitz to, keep him from doing anything silly. Refilling our supply of thumb hoodies, we clear the wave of soldiers at the marsh, strip the joint, restock again, and head to the Volcano! Bale sells frost spears, so I'm very prepared for the fire area. However, there was one boss I was a little worried about, this Virage fella. These are said to be magical creatures who warred against the Dragoons thousands of years ago and are kept alive by a pure magical loathing, so I was expecting to hit a brick wall in terms of damage output. Luckily for us, this fucker still went down pretty easy. A couple points where the battle stalled due to stun status effects, but overall, no worries. From here, it's 2 maps until the next boss, the Firebird, but he died in 3 frost spears, and we effortlessly moved on to the next area. The first disc of Dragoon has this really tight progression where bosses are strung back to back. For this run, that means our inventory always needs to be bursting, and we're lucky as there's a merchant in the volcano who sold us some good shit to pad the old bag a bit. We've got one more boss to hit before the next town, and I don't want to get caught with my pants down. Even if Rose is there. Moving through the forest, I grab a chest plate for Dart, giving him the power of a chest plate, and we fall into a free heal. I saved on an alternate slot here as the only way back to the surface is through victory, and I wasn't confident in my inventory distribution. Fondling the flaccid plants and gripping some thick veins later, we find ourselves face to face with another Dragoon, but he's no friend and he's brought a mate along with him. At this point, I had a bunch of earth elemental items, and these fellas are wind-based, which meant big damage, but each time I pinged the dragon, he powered up and would eventually blast Rose so hard her legs went weak. This was my first ally death, and luckily I had an emergency revive, and we just barely clocked him before the big mean dragon wilted my precious flower a second time. The only reason these bosses are even remotely challenging is my complete commitment to glass cannoning the game, and blatant disregard for the health of my party. Lavitz gets some nice armor, which is good, because I feel like his torso needs some fortification, and then Shana gets down with the sickness, and we take her to a doctor in the next town, Lohan. After another stock up and a new hat for Rose, increasing her magic yet again, we weep at the fact that we can't afford a legend casque, which is the best helmet in the game, and carry on to Shirley's shrine. This area is empty, the chests contain taunts and bad vibes, and that's not what this run's about, so I expertly run past everything, go for a cheeky roller coaster ride, and arrive at the boss, Drake. Drake is a bandit with some tricks up his sleeve, but these are mostly hindrances for melee fellas. He's got a set of 3 bombs that slowly roll towards each party member, and a sticky web barrier that catches weapons, but since we're blasting magic that hits everyone, we plow through them with no issue. The next boss, Shirley, is all talk, so we have a chinwag and we're back to save Shana. Turns out she's a Dragoon too, again, tragic since she'll never know the euphoria of a Dragon Knight transformation, and then we enter the tournament of strongly man fighters. You can win or lose any of these battles, and it makes no difference as they yield no experience or gold. Unfortunately, my dart's way too strong to lose, so I have to burn a bunch of items to make progress, which genuinely sucks. We get slapped down by Lloyd, a soldier informs us the king's been captured. Hashel softens up Lavitt's tummy with his crusty old fists, honestly a pretty stupid thing to do in hindsight, and then we're off to save the king, back to the depths of hell. Enna. We've been here before, so let's do it quicker this time. We fleece the joint, finding a good passive ring for Rose that restores 10% of her HP per turn. Since she's the only character not guarding, and I hate healing, she'll probably need this. A few other insignificant items and we get chucked in a pit to fight a big ugly monster. He's got a bit of a kick but goes down smooth, and it's at this point where I realise that magic is actually overpowered, and this isn't even a challenge run anymore. It's a slaughter. A string of bad boys follows this, something like 6 mandatory encounters against multiple enemies, which chews through my cask fund, but we're in luck as the merchant from before's back, and he's got better items than the last time. We stock up and head to the top to finally confront Frugal and save the king with no casualties. Frugal comes rocking 2 more pals this time, like he's scared to fight alone or something, but they're Devil May Cry bosses and we're playing easy auto-fire. 3 Thunderbolts drops the dog, another for the bird, and Frugal does a bit of damage but succumbs to Rose before long, proving once and for all that even the hardest man will succumb all over her. With the enemies defeated and the day saved, every good fella leaves the prison safely and securely. No deaths at all. Can you believe how lucky we were? I'm so proud of this team being so careful and so strong. We return to Lohan for one final time, shed a tear for the legend casque we'll be leaving on this continent, fill our inventory with attack items, and head to Khazar, the territory of Emperor Doel. We fleet-footed thieves strip the place, as is tradition, buy some new armor for our boys, ignoring the weapons because we don't need them anyway, and head to the slums, where we also take from the poverty-stricken, oppressed people to maximize our success rate. Look, we're doing it for them too, it's fine. Sneaking under the castle is a sequence of patrolling boys who lock onto you when you enter the area of influence, but each is easily ran around. Then we do the same and run right past the front guards and... There's a lot of busy work and chests here, but nothing really worth mentioning. We get the 3 gems, clear all mandatory encounters, and head up to what I thought was going to be the run killer. Kongol, the Giganto from Hoax, is back, and this time he's got big scary armor with spikes and shit. He's still just as weak to magic, and having a character that isn't Dart or Lavitz, too soon, means we can blast him in about 3 hits. As I said, I'm decently knowledgeable about Legend of Dragoon, and I explicitly remember this motherfucker having a shield which negated all magic damage, but he didn't use it. I beat him 3 different times trying to trigger it, but he either died too fast, or, I don't know, not using melee attacks doesn't prompt the magic shield, which is strange, you'd think it'd be the opposite. When he dies, the models appear for a brief moment as well, it's just bizarre. Oh well, we grab this hidden missable chest, which contains an item I may need in the future, and head towards the final boss of Disc 1, Emperor Doel. I'm a little worried about old Bobby. Every time I've fought him in the past, he's always done significant damage to my boys, and takes quite a while to kill. I've got Shana and Rose with Darty Boy fronting, and I'm hoping that Shana will be strong enough to tank any physical hits. If it goes tits up, I can sub it for Hashel, but I really would prefer Shana get the experience. The first phase was pretty easy. By this point, Dart had around 600 health, and while guarding would take about 30 from Doel. Since guard restores 10% of his HP, I was practically invincible. However, Doel has a second phase where he becomes a Dragoon with 2 giant swords and choreographed magic. He can do a sweeping attack to hit everyone, cast his own magics, etc. So everyone's up for grabs at this point. Shana takes about 1/3 of her health with each attack, even while guarding, and only restores a small fraction, but having a party with a high magic defense was a good call, as he seems to rely more on magic. Or at least for me, he did. Things are going swimmingly, we're laying on the damage, and the purple nurple drops to about half health. When he's at half, he casts a barrier which negates all damage and lasts for about 4 turns. Apparently attacking this extends its duration, but I've never fucked around and found out, and after these 4 incredibly riveting turns, we get back to blasting. Everyone's holding up alright, Doel's down to critical health, and we have 3 more attack items in our inventory. Rose throws one at the Purple Emperor, which would be a great nickname for a penis, and he dies. God, what a relief. We cut it real close there, but pulled through. It seems that going forward, my biggest hurdle will be my damage, more so than the enemy, and I'll just have to take advantage of elemental weaknesses where I can, and try to keep a healthy stock at all times, maybe even subbing out my emergency healing for more attack. And with that, we're on to Disc 2. Arriving in a new exciting city, we do a lot of busy work, then stock and gear up before heading out. Something about a princess and a pregnant woman who doesn't understand boundaries, it's all very unimportant to this run. On the way to a city where we feel a bit more welcome, we meet the survivor of a nuclear fallout, and as you can tell by the music, this little fella thinks he's a boss fight. With a pathetic health pool that we very quickly blast through, even his mates bail the second pressure's applied. However, Dart's retarded and loses his Dragoon spirit, so now we're without this incredibly important power, and this is where the run gets super difficult. Oh wait. We hit up the new town and collect my favourite jailbait character, Meru. Was it supposed to be Mel? Because Meru sounds really wrong. Like, Meru is supposed to be like Mel, and they just mistranslated it. I don't know, Meru's a stupid name. Anyway, she's basically a faster Shana at this point, and even has higher magic attack than Rose, so she'll be my wife friend from here on. She's a bit of a riskier play with the lower health and physical defense, but I think the speed will more than make up for it. Plus, the reward for collecting 20 Stardust is an accessory that increases max health by 50%, so she can wear that for now. A shitload more exposition later, and we're in our first real fighty zone, the Valley of Corrupted Gravity. I wonder why they call it that. A handful of chests and a free heal later, and we come up against another Virage boss. This fella's a bit different to the last guy, in that he has his entire body, but he's just as much of a pushover. Even with the additional parts, magic that targets all enemies makes short work of this supposedly magical being. Next, we're on to the Giganto place, and we skim through it, we fleece it, grab the bandits ring on the way, which increases a male character's speed by 20 points. As Hashel's mandatory for the next boss, he can use this for a little bit. Through the Bogdanov corridor, up the stairs, around the bend, neck chop a 16-year-old, and we're at the next boss, Garich and Mappy. These dudes used to give me grief. Dart didn't have his Dragoon transformation, Mappy has an insta-kill technique, and the two can link up for a dangerous combo that does severe physical damage, which isn't great when you're rocking a Meru-reliant party. See how that's... I could have said Mel-reliant, but I said Meru-reliant, and you gotta like a sad dog. She was only targeted by the scary move once, and dodged it, somehow. Mappy died before he could insta-kill anyone, and Garich is a fluffy baby kitten on his own, so it was an easy sweep. I even finished him with Hashel for symbolism or some shit. After the Kongoloid cutscene, we get our Dragoon spirit back, which is great because we'll need that, and return to confront the fake princess. I'm cripplingly stupid and put Albert in my party because I fought a few random encounters on the way back just to grab some auxiliary experience and felt bad for the dude. Short story, slightly shorter, Lennis defaced me. After a shameful reload, I made the trek back to Lohan to stock up on fire burny items, because Lennis has always been a moist casual filter, and then I returned to stomp the bitch by spamming burnouts. She's fast and does double damage to Dart because he's a fire type, but nothing particularly interesting happened. I struggled through, and a win is a win. Now we go for a cheeky sail on the bloat, grab some Stardust, and then the mistakes of the past ram us from the side. This dungeon is the spookiest part of the game. The ghost ship, ooh! As almost every enemy's a darkness type and the store on the ship sells light items, this was pretty easy. Oh, I'm just kidding. I got wiped by a regular enemy because I was too proudy and was ailed to death. It wasn't entirely RNG that fucked me, I was being stingy and didn't want to cast the not at all expensive elemental items on such minor enemies. It's an important life lesson, I think. If you ever see a ghost ship, just leave. On my return, dragging my whole ass with me, I cleared it effortlessly and mashed through more exposition before Dart and Rose were cast into the salty blue. Lots of sad Rose later, and we meet up with the crew again to take on Lennis and her pet dragon, and this time she's slightly less difficult, because I bought more fire items. It was the same approach as the former fight. Dart blocks and heals because he takes double damage, with Meru and Rose spamming fire magics. The dragon died in 5 well-mashed burnouts, and Lennis had a slightly higher magic defense but wasn't far behind. The rest of Disc 2 is exposition and kissing, so we move on to Disc 3. After the first chapter, Dragoon drops off hard and subs gameplay for exposition, so if it seems like I'm skimming over a lot of shit, it's because I am. We paddle around on a peanut and collect a new accessory for Meru to increase her magic attack by 20 points. It's expensive and removes her health increase talisman, but we're looking for damage output, not a long-term relationship. Moving through the forest, I find that it's taking me a particularly lengthy time to flee. I don't know if I'm under-leveled, as I've only really fought bosses up till this point, or if the enemies here just want me to stay. Either way, there's an optional fight with a boss, which I leave till later because he's putting the smackdown on me at this point, and I want my golden girl before I do anything else. Heading to Denengrad, we sub Shana out for Miranda and keep Meru around, so now we've got 2 pathetically weak glass cannons, so the natural thing to do is tackle a boss fight. Kamui doesn't hit too hard with melee and seems to rely on magics when he's weaker, so we blast through him with fairly... What? So we blast through him with fairly easy? Who the fuck wrote this shit? Meru dies, but honestly, that's better for Miranda's stats anyway, as she's far superior in terms of damage output. I loot the forest for shit to sell, and then we head to the Wingley encampment to get the Dragon Block Staff. The store here sells an accessory that increases magic attack by 30, which is huge at this point, so... It's not huge at this point, it's huge in general. 30 is a lot of points. So anyway, we grab one of those for Miranda, stock up on attack items, and head to the next boss. Some absolute clown did not proofread this 9,000 word script. Moving through this annoying stage, I pilfer the chests and end up at a boss. He's a rock with a staff in his brain, so naturally, he's the toughest thing I've fought so far. What I wish I knew was that the boss has a fairly high magic defense, and if you take too long, he levels the party down, reducing damage. So I was blasting away casually with my magics, like surely I'll win this, the game's been a joke up to this point, when I'm suddenly down a bunch of levels, barely hitting him for a fourth of what I was doing at the start of the fight. Before too long, he's down to critical health, and I have barely enough items to take him out, and then he pops a heal for about a quarter of his health and I run out of items. Shit. This is the first time since Disc 1 where I've had to brew a new strat. I don't have a full inventory of attack items because I got overly cocky and was using them on regular mobs, so I try leaving the place to buy more, and I can't leave. Okay, fuck, when did I save last? In this place. Okay, when was my last alternate save? On Disc 2. Great. I didn't want to head all the way back to the Phantom ship, so I figured I'd clean up the optional boss as the area has a free heal. Now you might be thinking, if you've got too few attack items, why are you doing a different boss? Well, this fella kills himself after 10 turns, so all I have to do is block, receive my free level up, and then I can do a little bit more damage for the Staff Rock. The Super Virage isn't so super when you're blocking every turn, and barely even worth mentioning, so I grab my free experience and swap Hashel for Meru so I can front load a bunch of magic spam on this motherfucker. It turns out my desperation to not replay 10 hours over 2 enthralling discs took my MASH game to an entirely new paradigm. It was breaking new ground. I was consistently stringing over 200%, where throughout most of the game I was struggling to hit 190, which is about 5 extra mashes in the same duration. With a speed up on Miranda to get some extra moves before I was weakened and a horde of magic spam, I pulled it off, but goddamn was my thumb sore. But that doesn't matter. I beat a relatively weak enemy in a video game no one cares about, doing a meme run for shits and giggles, so it was all worth it. This is also where I discovered that Power Up, a reusable item that I picked up a while back, works on magic, so we're keeping this one. Upon victory, a big dragon does some stuff, so I returned to Denengrad to stock up, and I stocked hard this time, no fuck-assing around with an empty inventory. As the run rate still sucks, I keep a bunch of unusable losers in my party until I arrive at the boss, and then I forget to swap them out. I need to pay more attention or I'm gonna get bricked again. Alright, I'm ripping through this zone. I got a new armor for Kongol, and in another chest I got a dragon helmet for Miranda, which increases not only her magic attack and defense, but also gives her plus 50% max HP, which is fantastic for a pathetically weak femoid. The next boss is equal parts magic as he is physical, and cause Kongol just got some fancy new armor, I put him in the party for a bit of physical fortification. Now we head to fight the Divine Dragon. This dude's always given me grief in the past, but he legitimately went down in a couple hits. With a power up on Miranda and a magic that hits all 3 of his bits, he barely lasted a couple turns, and then his face was soon to follow. Legitimately, the easiest fight on Disc 3. Skipping more story shit, Lloyd heads to the top of his twisted goon cave, then we slip around an ice field before running into a Wendigo. This fella has a fair health pool, and being water elemental, all damage against Dart is doubled. He's also quite fond of magic, so Kongol and Dart were more liabilities than anything. We creamed him before he could open his heart to us, and I had to walk all the way back to town to stock up, as there's a fight with Lloyd coming up, and the Wendigo genuinely had that much health he stripped me bare. The fight with Lloyd is another one where we'll fortunately miss the main gimmick. Our boy's still rocking the Dragon Buster, so if you turn into a Dragoon for longer than a turn, he'll insta-kill you in retaliation. Even not utilizing this overpowered bullshit, Lloyd is still stupidly fast and hits like a truck, both physically and magically. He does take decent damage from magic, but at one point he sends Dart to the Shadow Realm, so I try to mash through his bullshit and pop off a cheeky win before anyone else follows. Then he wombo combos Miranda, and I'm left with Kongol, the slowest character with the lowest magic defense against a super fast magic user. The Giganto Warrior revives Miranda, who's immediately targeted with a physical that would have killed her, if not for the physical shield that I put on her a few turns ago. Good to know that that lasts even if you die. A final attack item's cast, and Dart revives himself to give Lloyd a cheeky slasherino, and that's that. Probably the toughest fight thus far, and maybe one of the toughest in the game. We'll have to wait and see. Moving right along, Dugadun, and there's some stupid slide shit I gotta do to get some items, but there's also an optional boss down here who is 3 ghosty blokes. I was gonna leave this until later, but he's hiding a reusable item that allows you to run from battles with a 100% success rate, so I need that. He's not too hard, but dispatching the sword insta-kills Miranda, and Dart doesn't have the juice to finish what my golden princess started. I reload and have another crack, but I pre-hit the armor with Miranda, allowing Dart to finish them off. It's a pretty uninteresting fight, and it sucks that Miranda missed experience, but I get my smoke ball and a new armor for Dart, and we're on our way to Disc 4, because all that's left is exposition. I'm kinda relieved to be here, because that Lloyd fight had me a bit worried. Like, I wasn't sure if I was playing like dog shit and I just wasn't prepared, or if the game's starting to ramp up. Luckily, Disc 4 would answer all those questions.
Hello, I'm David Bowie.
What the?
We open with a bit of exposition and get thrust into a desert map. Fucking desert maps in JRPG, man. If you can name a good desert in a JRPG, you're a liar. Luckily, this one's not too bad. There's enemies we can physically avoid to sidestep encounters, and a few items I neglect to pick up, which will become incredibly relevant later, but we'll talk about that when we get there. More exposition and backtracking, and we finally take the ship to Hashel's hometown to cash in the 50 Stardust we've been quietly accumulating throughout the game. This will unlock the super duper secret hard boss, and we continue to the first dungeon. The magical city Agles is full of babbling sperm demons that give up the strongest magic in the game, Psych Bomb X, which is reusable. Reusable items don't leave your inventory, but can only be used once per encounter. I no longer have to run from random battles, as I can one-shot everything, which means I can clear up some space to make room for more damage output. And this will be very necessary, as the first boss on Disc 4 brutally demonstrates why. I straight up just don't have the inventory to take him, which forces a reload as I can't leave Agles. Now, you'd think that with my troubles on Disc 3, I'd have learnt my lesson and would have saved. On Disc 4, in a second slot. You're wrong. My last alternate save was just before the start of Disc 4, and that makes me upsetty spaghetti, but I suck it up and I run through Disc 4 again, dodge all the items in the desert for a second time, because I'm fucking stupid, stock up to the extreme, and get busy cracking. This fight isn't risky, but it does take every single one of my attack items to beat him, but with a bit of luck, we barely clock it and progress. Arriving at a new area, we get a free trip back to the main world, which is handy as from this point onward, no store sells attack items. I think it goes without saying that I was shitting myself at this point. I was 30 hours into a run, plus or minus 10 because of my abysmal saving habits, and the stores stopped stocking my ticket to completing the challenge. Disc 4 was where the real run began, as I was operating within extreme restrictions to minimize my use of attack items, and if the previous boss was anything to go by, it wasn't going to be simple. I returned to the real world and dumped most of my inventory, but I kept Power Up and Psych Bomb X, which gave me 30 slots to cram with attack items. I saw this as a great opportunity to get some free levels by doing a handful of side quests, and the higher my stats are, the less items I'll need going forward, so I head on over to where the Dragoons of old rest. This is a collection of 4 fights, which are reasonably difficult and are collectively worth about 4 or 5 levels for my crew at this point. There's nothing really worth mentioning, but I clean them all up with only one trip to restock, and at this point my Legend Cask fund has reached its goal, and so I head on over to Lohan to grab one, and I put it on Kongol because he has dogshit magic defense. But these special helmets grant extreme increases to magic defense, a 50% dodge rate for all enemy magics, and a small bump to magic attack, so Having even one of these breaks the game, but with absolutely no item slots for healing or reviving, I'm probably going to need 3. There's only one more side quest at this point, and I am not ready, so I continue with the main story for now, and I'll reconsider my options at a later date. This coming map is one of the worst in the game, as you're forced to run around these Rayman characters, or they lock you in a prison and force you to redo the movement section. Eventually, we reach the boss of the area, who Miranda practically one-shots with the Psych Bomb X. Maybe the lack of items in the stores won't be so bad after all. Maybe Disc 4 is doable. Is this foreshadowing? I think this is foreshadowing. The next area is Death City Mayfill, one of the coolest in the game, or maybe I just like it because it comes directly after a dogshit place like Xenobados. There are 3 optional boss fights against the spirits of the dragons we felled, though significantly stronger than last we fought. As I'm cultivating experience and the Psych Bomb X seems to be killing everything with minimal effort, I clear all 3 and, feeling pretty good. Moving to the next area, we encounter Lavitz, who went on vacation some discs back, but this time, he's a grumpy boy. Probably because we interrupted his vacation. After the 3 dragons, my inventory was fairly low, but I still managed to pull the win, and again nothing particularly noteworthy about this fight, though my inventory was completely gone, used every single item. Now we arrive at the point of no return. If I enter that beam of light, I'm prevented from ever coming back, which means that whatever I take in with me has to do until I can stock up on attack items, or failing that, the end of the game. However, I had one more thing to do while in Earthrealm. I had to fight Faust, the superboss. Here's the skinny on this fucker. This dude is rocking the highest magic defense so far and 26,000 HP, which is about twice the health of the Kraken. I stock up and head to Faust, where I get absolutely decimated and fell short of killing him by a few thousand damage, which means it's grind time. I generally advise against grinding in Legend of Dragoon, as a standard playthrough doesn't need it, but I want Faust dead, so I need more power. Dartfeld needs your help in the Legend of Dragoon. To beat the enemy Faust, he's gonna need 2 legend casks. So what he's gonna need from your parents' credit card. It took me until disc 4 to be able to afford 1, but I've got an inventory full of shit I don't need, and dumping all that nets me about 10 grand. Dart and Kongol are now both rocking a cask, so my defenders are primed. Miranda has a naturally high magic defense, but she could still use one of these game-breaking helmets, so I grind in Xenobados by one-shotting everything with the reusable Psych Bomb. These Ghost Knight enemies can drop swords that sell for about 200 or so gold, and an average battle yields about 70, so if I get a healthy amount of drops, I'll hopefully be looking at about 100 fights, give or take. The bonus experience will also grant me more magic attack, and fingers crossed, that'll be enough to take this behemoth down. I finance my cask, stock my inventory, and head for the bastard who stalled my progress. A few trial runs, and if I mash really hard, I can rock about 900 damage a pop, and with a powered up Psych Bomb, I can just clear 26,000 if I keep the mashing consistent. One issue I quickly find is that Faust has a magic avoidance stat, which means he can dodge my items and it's random. It seems to be quite high too, like he dodges maybe 1 in 5 and I simply can't make up that damage. At absolute most, I could miss 2 or 3 items as long as the powered up Psych Bomb hits. After about 5 attempts, he gave me good RNG and I only missed a handful of casts, which was just enough to bring the bastard down. My thumb is in shambles. He yields 20,000 experience, the most in the game, as well as 10,000 gold, which is enough to buy another cask, but I've already got 3. What I can use, however, is a new set of plates for my girl Miranda, who has the physical defense of chocolate in the sun. Heading to Deningrad to fill my inventory with items one last time before the point of no return, I grab her an Armor of Legend, which costs 10 big ones and is the physical version of the cask. Together, the two prevent most damage and give you a 50% chance of dodging every attack in the game, so now all I have to focus on is my damage output, as I literally cannot die. I mean, except to insta-kill spells, but we'll deal with that when we get there. Running up the tree to our first boss, we find a bug which goes through the 3 phases of grief. Grub, Shell, Insta-Kill Butterfly, and he insta-kills Miranda. Sick. I have a talisman which prevents instant death spells, but Miranda would have to sacrifice some of her magic attack, which means I'd be burning more items. Unfortunately, I have a second attempt and he kills her again. I take the hint, put the talisman on, and burn through probably 1 or 2 extra attack items. We're already off to a bad start, and the bad times keep on rolling. We rocket to the moon, only to get dumped on, as each character now has an individual battle to fight, and some of these fuckers have incredibly low magic attack, which is gonna be bad for my supply. The first is Miranda, so she one-shots her victims, after which we arrive in a moon town, and the first thing I do is run to the item store to see what they sell, and no attack items. Fuck, it's over boys, pack it up. Well, let's see how far I can get before I'm victim to my own burnout. Or lack thereof. Haschel has a fight, and it's over in one shot. Kongol shortly after with another one shot. Dart and Rose are up next, and they one shot as well. The run's back on, boys. Albert follows, and he's up against Doel, who has 2 phases. Oh boy. I load him up with Miranda's magic gear and start the mash. I'm feeling powerful, and he takes 3 items. Albert, you fuck. Now that the run's over again, it's Meru's time to shine, and with her high magic attack, surely she'll only need 1 hit. I mash like I'm serving potatoes to the queen, and the boss requires 1 extra attack. You know what? 1's better than 3, Albert. The entire time I've been moving through these areas, I've been grabbing chests, because every one has a powerful attack item inside, which renews my hope and offsets the amount I burnt on the past 7 bosses. Now we're on the home stretch, we got a pretty bulked inventory, and we're ready for the final push. The next boss is the Super Virage again, but he doesn't kill himself this time. 2 attacks destroy his head, which makes him explode, so we only lose 1 item. At this point, we've got 17 attack items left, including Psych Bomb X, and 2 more bosses before the credits roll, so let's stop wasting time and tackle the penultimate fella, Zeeg. Zeeg is Fire Elemental, so we can ping him with some water moves for extra damage. He's barely a threat and goes down with 5 items used, giving us 12 to work with. We move forward, we're face to face with the final boss. Shana shows her feet for free, which made the whole journey worth it. Lloyd rocks up, gets death beamed by Frieza. We inherit his power, and we're poised to take on the final boss, Melbu Frama. This is where I come down from the euphoric ride, and the harsh realization hits me. The final boss has almost twice the health of Faust and a higher magic defense. To beat him, I'm gonna need more than 12 items. Faust had 26,000 health and 200 magic defense, with Melbu Frama having 42,000 health and 250 magic defense. Needless to say, with my current inventory stock and at my current level, it's just not doable. So that's it, boys, run's over, thanks for watching. But wait, enemies drop items, right? What if I could just mass farm an enemy to fill my inventory? Well, turns out every moon enemy has an 8% chance of dropping a powerful attack item, so it's grind time again. I head to the Dragon Nest area, where you can encounter 3 baby dragons, giving me 3 chances at the 8% drop per battle. I need 19 items to drop, which is going to take a while, but there's a chance of encountering Triceratops here too, and they pay out 2,000 experience, which is the most of any normal random encounter. I spend a good couple hours stocking my inventory, I get a couple level ups, and head toward the final challenge, with my heroes ready to see the conclusion to their abridged story. I do a quick test run for damage to calculate it all out instead of spending 40 odd minutes throwing items at him only for it to end in tragedy. Miranda throws an unbuffed item doing 800 damage, a buffed one does just over 1200, and a buffed Psych Bomb X does a whopping 3200. 28 lots of 800 plus 2 1200s and a single 3200 work out to be 28,000 health, roughly 14,000 shy of the 42,000 I have to do. Fuck. This is where the aforementioned skipping all the items in the desert really bit me in the ass, as in the same way that Power Up increases magic attack for 3 turns, there's an item in the sandy locale called Power Down. As you can guess, this decreases magic defense for 3 turns, and while it wouldn't have given me the required damage, it would have lessened the torture I was about to go through. Miranda was still in the early 40s at the point of realization, so I still had some unclaimed stats to utilize and worked out that I need to do roughly 1200 damage with an unbuffed attack to guarantee victory. I ground and ground until I was in the late 40s when I noticed a pattern. Miranda was gaining 3 magic attack per level, which meant that I had a finite range that I'd cap at. Starting from 42, I had a potential 54 more magic attack and worked out that each point correlated to 9 damage. With each level up granting me 27 extra attack, I'd need to hit around level 58 to get the required figures to put this man in the ground. The level cap in Dragoon's 60 and grinding takes forever, but I guess that's what we're doing. My grind method was simple. I had Meru try to die, that way the experience was split in half instead of into thirds. Dart was too strong to die, however, as guarding would make him invincible, and I couldn't burn turns without attacking. On a trip around the moon, my Miranda got one-shot by an enemy I failed to run from, which meant that I could kill off my Dart if they hit him with the same attack. Luckily, I triggered it, and had enemies periodically wipe Dart and Meru for 100% of the experience yield, which meant that Miranda was power leveling at 3 times the speed. It was pretty tough to pull off as I couldn't guard with either character, but I still had to burn turns, so I'd hope for an enemy to move before us and wipe either Dart or Meru. Then I'd burn a turn with one of the survivors by using a power up on Meru. If she stayed alive, her next turn would be spent killing the enemy with a Psych Bomb X, but if she died, Miranda would finish the mob for the full experience yield. After each battle, every ally revives with 1 health, which made this a fucking pain in the ass, and it only went to plan maybe 1 in 5 times, but most fights ended with at least 1 dead, so my speed leveling tech worked pretty well. As I ground, I'd periodically check back for damage tests. At 46, I was doing just shy of 900 damage, by 50 I was hitting slightly north of 1000, and level 55 put me at 1150 damage. I was getting close to the required amount, but grinding to win a game like this seems kinda anticlimactic, so I stopped grinding at 56, which was still not enough to take him when I shifted the emphasis back on myself, my own abilities. But that's right, I started trying to mash faster. The items that drop from the moon foes are the strongest attack items in the game, and they don't allow you to mash for extra damage. They do a flat amount, which is the equivalent of a 200% mash, and that's great, if you're not doing a shitty challenge run. Luckily for me, I had a few leftovers from Earth which were mashable, and if I could thumb pound that button faster, I could do just enough damage to claim victory. I could consistently mash to around 200%, which is roughly 8 or 9 presses a second. It's not particularly fast, so I found a mashing tutorial on how to go beyond. Unfortunately, the controller I was using had a shitty fucking X button, so the best mash I could hit was about 204%. It was time to grind again. Or was it? By the time my training was complete, I was consistently hitting 230%, often going beyond, and I'm sure that if I kept at it, I could take it even further, but it was just enough to seal the final demon and secure victory using nothing but items and 3 double slashes at the beginning of the game. I know it doesn't really prove that I didn't use physical attacks, but here's my addition list, so at the very least, I didn't complete any of them. Also, Miranda hit Dragoon level 2 because she had gear which gave her SP whenever she got hit, and she took enough wax to get her there, which you'll see periodically throughout the footage. Would I recommend you do this? Fuck no, it strips all the fun out of the game because most fights become trivial and it neglects one of the most enjoyable, technically impressive JRPG combat systems. The mashing also hurts your thumb, and I'll look back on this when I'm old and want to slap myself, but I can't because of the arthritis. If you've made it this far, thank you for coming on this journey with me. Good night.